Imagine a thriving rat society with unlimited food and water, a seemingly perfect world. This experimental utopia took a sudden dark turn. The once vibrant community descended into chaos that eventually died out. This is a story about Universe 25, which is believed to be a grim fate that humans face due to overpopulation and overcrowding of cities. In the wake of World War II, the public became increasingly aware of the environmental devastation caused by war. A strong movement emerged to repair the damage and prevent further ecological harm. At the same time, due to the Industrial Revolution, there's a major push to exploit natural resources for the sake of business. This era also saw the rise of the Neo-Malthusians, a group inspired by 18th century scholar Thomas Robert Malthus. Malthus warned that populations tend to grow exponentially while food production increases at a slower linear rate. He predicted a future known as Malthusian catastrophe, where overpopulation and food shortages would cause societal collapse. These ideas resonated with many. Writers explored the potential consequences, and governments became concerned about the effects of crowded cities and how societies might function under such pressure. There was another looming problem. Developed cities, like Baltimore, were plagued by severe rat infestations. To address this issue, a group of scientists launched the Rodent Ecology Project in Baltimore. Their goal was to eliminate rodent pests in cities. The project had limited success, partly because no one could figure out what aspects of rodent behavior, lifestyle, or biology to target. In this team there is John Calhoun, who grew up in Tennessee, the son of a high school principal, and was an avid birder. He joined the team after earning his PhD in zoology in 1946. Calhoun set up his first Utopia, involving Norway rats, in the woods behind his house to monitor rodents over time and figure out what factors drove their population growth. Eventually, Calhoun grew fascinated with the rodent behavior for its own sake and began crafting ever more elaborate and carefully controlled environments. It wasn't just the behavior of rats that interested him. Architects and civil engineers at the time were having vigorous debates about how to build better cities, and Calhoun imagined urban design might be studied in rodents first, and then extrapolated to human beings. Both of these combined set the stage for Calhoun's 25th iteration of Rat Utopia, popularly dubbed as Universe 25. According to Calhoun, any species has two kinds of death. One is the death of spirit, which is the motivation or purpose to live, and the second one is death of the body, which might be due to emigration, resource shortage, harsh weather, disease, and predators. Despite facing various threats, most animal species endure for long periods. This resilience is due to their ability to reproduce, offsetting losses from these mortality factors. Universe 25 aimed to create the opposite scenario. Calhoun meticulously designed a world free from these mortality factors, a utopia for rat population growth. He built an enclosure, designed as a closed system with high walls that the mice couldn't climb over. Setup had a constant and abundant supply of food and water, regularly replenished to sustain the mice. During cooler months, temperature was kept close to room temperatures, and during the warmer months, large exhaust fans were kept to regulate temperatures. The Balbsi albino house mice was used as colonizers in this study, where extreme precautions are followed to preclude establishment of epidemic-type diseases. Being a closed environment, Universe 25 had no external predators to threaten the mice. 4 pairs of mice, each 48 days old, were introduced into the 16-cell universe. Before this, they were kept alone for 3 weeks after being weaned from their mothers. At first, everything seemed normal. But for the next 3.5 months, there were social conflicts among the mice as they adjusted to living together. Following this adjustment and the birth of the first litters, the population had an exponential increase, with a doubling time of about 55 days. This phase lasted for 104 days. Things changed dramatically in Phase B. Young mice matured faster and reproduced earlier, accelerating population growth. However, breeding wasn't evenly distributed. Some nest boxes had many babies, while others had few or none. This difference became a marker of social status. The most active males were dominant, and their activity levels decreased as their social status declined. During this phase, both cooperation within groups and competition between them led to the most efficient use of resources, further fueling the population explosion. By the end, all the desirable living spaces were occupied by established social groups. There were over 3 times as many younger animals as the socially established older ones. This number is far greater than that would have existed had the normal ecological mortality factors functioned. Phase B's rapid growth slowed in Phase C. The population doubling time increased from 55 days to 145 days. Normally, some young mice survive to replace older ones who die. Extras would typically leave to find their own space. However, emigration was not possible in Universe 25. As the unusually large number of young mice matured, they couldn't find roles within the established social structure. This led to competition and frustration. Males who failed in this competition withdrew from social life altogether. They became inactive and aggregated in large pools near the center of the floor. They no longer interacted with others and were frequently attacked by other withdrawn males, leading to injuries and scars. Females also faced challenges. Some withdrew to less desirable nesting areas. Unlike the males, they weren't violent. Territorial males, stressed by the constant pressure from young mice trying to find a place, became less effective at defending their territories. This left nursing mothers more vulnerable to attacks on their nests. Mothers who wouldn't normally be aggressive became so in response to these attacks. Unfortunately, this aggression sometimes turned towards their own young, who were injured and forced to leave the nest prematurely. This, along with other factors like declining birth rates and difficulties caring for young, significantly slowed population growth in Phase C. By the end of this phase, social order had practically collapsed. By day 560, population growth in Universe 25 had abruptly ceased. A handful of mice born before that day survived weaning, but births barely outnumbered deaths. The last pregnancy occurred around day 920, and by June 22, 1972, only 22 males and 100 females were left. Predictions based on the exponential decline suggested the last mouse would die by May 1973. This population collapse defied expectations. Normally, even small groups can bounce back and revive a population. But something fundamental had broken in Universe 25. The roots of this collapse may have begun near the end of Phase C. Mothers were rejecting their young too early, leaving them without the strong social bonds they needed to develop. As these youngsters moved out into the already crowded environment, their attempts to interact with others were constantly interrupted by the movement of other mice. These 3 factors, lack of early social bonding, constant social disruption, and fragmented social behavior, prevented the development of essential social skills like courtship, parenting, and aggression. Some male counterparts, also known as the beautiful ones, were never engaged in sexual approaches toward females, and they never engaged in fighting, and so they had no wound or scar tissue. Thus, their body remained in excellent condition. Their behavior largely confined to eating, drinking, sleeping, and grooming, none of which carried any social implications. As their formerly more competent predecessors gradually became old, their reproduction capacity also deteriorated. By this point, only the beautiful ones and their female counterparts remained at an age typically suited for reproduction. However, they had never developed this ability in the first place. Not only this, shockingly, when these small groups of mice were taken out of these from the crowded environment and placed in new, spacious universes, they couldn't rebuild a social structure or reproduce. Even introducing them to healthy mates who had grown up in uncrowded conditions didn't reignite their lost reproductive behaviors. For an animal so complex as man, there is no logical reason why a comparable sequence of events should not also lead to species extinction if opportunities for role fulfillment fall far short of the demand by those capable of filling roles. Only violence and disruption of social organization can follow. Individuals born under these circumstances will be so out of touch with reality as to be incapable even of alienation. Their most complex behaviors will become fragmented. Acquisition, creation, utilization of ideas appropriate for life in a post-industrial society will have been blocked. Loss of complex behaviors means death of the species.